Usually how we do this is we just do a top 10. We don't want to spend fucking 45 minutes to go over power rankings for all 32 teams every single week, because that would just be fucking exhausting. And then we would have a 3-hour podcast instead of a 2-hour podcast. It's already long enough as it is. And this one, I don't think it's going to be super long because, we can lightning round, 5 by 5 basically. Um, but yeah, top 32. This is how we're going to do it. Drew, let's go ahead and start off 32 to 28. You'll fire off yours, I'll fire off mine. If we want to talk about positioning of within those five, we totally can. If we're like, yeah, we're totally in lockstep agreement, let's move on to the next set. Good?
Absolutely. Small caveat as I give you 28 through 32. I am ranking my power rankings not on how they ended the season, but how I think we're going into next season. I am going
Oh,
to
okay.
take into consideration that the Titans have the first round pick. I am going to take into consideration that the Titans have $61 million in cap space right now.
Okay.
Things of that nature. That being said, um, at 32, I do have the Tennessee Titans. Um, they fired their GM this offseason. They're keeping their head coach.
Yeah.
They don't have a quarterback on the roster. They don't have a bridge quarterback on the roster. Bringing Shedeur Sanders in or Cam Ward in and having him learn from Will Levis or Mason Rudolph is not the answer. So
Right.
you got to draft a guy and you got to go get a guy. They spent, and the other problem is they spent a ton of money this offseason. They trade for a corner. They bring in Tony Pollard. They do all these things
Calvin
and they come out and
Ridley.
they win.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yep.
come out and they win 3 games.
Yep.
So that's, to me, that's terrible. And the only thing that Tennessee Titans have going for them is that those Houston Oilers jerseys looked legit on the TV last Sunday.
Yeah. I do enjoy the pettiness of Tennessee always seeming to wear the Houston Oilers jerseys, always playing Houston. Coincidentally, I guess you could say. Yeah, I always join that a little bit. Um, I'm gonna fire off my 32 to 28. 32 I have the New York Giants. 31 I have the Cleveland Browns. 30 I have the Tennessee Titans. 29 I have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and 28 I have the Las Vegas Raiders.
Okay. So I'm with you. 32 is the Titans, 31 is the Browns. The
Yeah.
Browns, they got some defensive pieces, but their quarterback situation's a mess.
Yep.
At 29, I have the New York Giants. I don't really know what the hell they're going to do this offseason. They screwed themselves out of the quarterbacks. Drew Lock is not the answer. I don't care what Brian Daboll says. They have a lot of things they need to fix. Who would you have at 28?
I had
29?
the 29 the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay. The thing about the Jacksonville Jaguars is that they have a really good roster on paper. So if they bring the right head coach in, that something could change.
Sure.
And then at 28, I have the New England Patriots. I wanted to rank the Patriots higher because I think they're going to hire Vrabel,
Mhm.
but they haven't yet. So I won't. I'm going to leave them here. But the fact that they decided to get rid of Gerard Mayo and they're going to bring in a real head coach this offseason makes me think, with the fact that they have Drake May, who was up and down this year,
Yep.
and that they are in the position where they are probably going to take the first wide receiver off the board in Mr. McMillan. I know Travis will go before him, but I think Travis should be a corner. So they have an opportunity to upgrade in a couple of places this offseason. So I got them at 28.
Yeah, I think with just explaining some of the positioning stuff, I think that the Titans have a more talented roster than, especially the Giants. They're the bottom of the barrel to me. I'm not sure where the talent is around there. I know Tyrone Tracy had a pretty decent year. He didn't quite hit 1,000. He had 1,000 scrimmage yards. I know that. The offensive line has holes all over it. Evan Neal's like the worst starting offensive lineman in the league right now. Um, One of the worst right tackles in the league, maybe right next to Terrence Steele, because he's a fucking dog pile piece of shit too. You have Malik Neighbors, and then what? What's after him, right? No quarterback.
That's a pretty good number one, though.
That is a pretty good number one, but then you're wondering on what you do with the rest of it. Obviously, a couple defensive pieces. You got Big Boy in the middle, who's one of the best defensive players in the league right now. I know Brian Burns is obviously over there, but then the rest of it's just kind of you don't know what you're doing with the rest of it. So I don't think the roster is super talented compared to some of the other teams that are in front of them. Um, you could basically toss up Tennessee, Cleveland, and New York, and take your pick of what team you want to start a franchise, you want to start and pick, and what you want to GM. And you're not going to be in a great position either way. With some of those Tennessee pieces, I know some of them got hurt and they were up and down a little bit on the year. And some of it was Will Levis quarterback play on not being able to get performance out of him. So I still believe in
We're
a
going
lot
to
of
talk
stuff.
about Tennessee though. So
Yeah. Tennessee, obviously, we'll cover a lot of that later on. Um, and then the Raiders are just a fucking hellhole situation that always seems to be stuck at the bottom of the barrel. So I did rank them at 28 behind some of these other teams that I don't see teams really. I see half decent teams once we get to like 24. That's when like the half decent teams to me start. Um, but starting off with the next five, 27 through 23, Drew. 27, I had the New England Patriots, so just one spot ahead of the Las Vegas Raiders. A lot of that has to come with Drake May and how I believe in Drake and the pieces that they can have over there. Um,
and I have the Raiders there just to be clear. So we're completely even through 27.
I have the New Orleans Saints here at 26. I have the New York Jets at 25. A lot of talent on the roster for New York. Here's where the half decent teams can start, depending on how coaching can go, how you can beef up that fucking offensive line. Chicago Bears at 24. And the uh, great led uh, Carolina Panthers at 23, Bryce Young. So that's my 27 through 23. Again, I think Chicago and Carolina could be a lot better next year, depending on how you kind of build up those teams, depending on who you hire, and how you again build around that offensive line for both those teams. Because I think that's where a lot of your problems start, and your defense for Carolina is pretty god awful. But I love Bryce, so he's sitting right at the top of the okay team. He's half decent.
Yeah, the Bears and the Panthers have to live there because they have quarterbacks.
Yep.
The Saints don't have a quarterback.
Yep.
Spencer Rattler was cool, but he's not a starting quarterback in the league, at least not right now.
Yeah.
The Jets are a complete dumpster fire.
Yeah.
The Jets let the owner and the quarterback run the team all season. They fired their head coach. They fired their GM. Aaron Rodgers loaded up the team with all his friends. They all sucked. He pointed fingers. He did his Aaron Rodgers shit, tarnished his legacy. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that it was New York, I'd have them even lower. But the problem is when you're New York, when you're LA, when you're bitch ass Boston, you get to just bring these guys in because people want to play in these cities. So
Yep.
they're going to get recruits
Yeah.
and they're going to be okay. But I'm higher on the Bears going forward than the Panthers just a bit because I think the Bears, all they need is a coach.
Yeah.
If Bears don't get out their paycheck, their checkbook, I got one right here for everybody. I know if you're young, you probably don't know what this is, but this is how you write checks. If the Bears don't get out their checkbook and they'll offer $20 million a year to Ben Johnson to be their head coach, I don't know what they're doing. That's what I would recommend. So
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So would you have 27 through 23?
I had them in a little bit of different order. I
Okay.
had the Panthers at 23. I had the Bears at 24, Saints at 25. I had
Okay.
the Jets at 27 because they're a dumpster fire. I think this is really where it gets interesting though. At 22, I got the Indianapolis Colts.
Oh, okay.
They have a question there with their young quarterback.
Mhm. Yep.
I actually had them a little higher, but then I started reading some of the stuff DeForest Buckner said about Anthony Richardson, a couple other things, and maybe put a little baby red flag on that. So,
Yep.
but he is hella talented. You still have a Jonathan Taylor. You still have a Michael Pittman. You still have Shane Steichen. Like
Yep.
there's options there. At 21, I got the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
They're hella talented. I don't know what happened to them this year. Obviously, we got the bad Kirk Cousins this year. So they are probably right back in the middle of being favorites to win their division next year, but they're 8-9 this year. So I had to leave them out. At 19, at 20, I got the Miami Dolphins. The reason for that is you got your best player saying that he doesn't want to play here anymore. You have your young running back that really fell off this year. You have your quarterback who probably shouldn't play quarterback anymore, and you don't have a replacement on the roster. And it's just one of those things going through there every year. Um, at 19, I got the Arizona Cardinals. I think it was a disappointing season for their draft picks. I know
Sure.
Darius Robinson got hurt, but he was not good in the time he played. Marvin Harrison Jr., you see the talent every time he takes the field, but when you compare him to a Malik Neighbors and some of the other stuff that happened this year, wasn't the um, so-called greatest, rookie wide receiver this year. And then at these next two teams, I might be going one too many, but I want to sneak in the 49ers and the Cowboys. I don't really care where you rank them. If you want to rank them at 17 and 18 or whatever, 18 and 17, 17 and 16. Um, the Dallas Cowboys don't have a head coach right now,
Mm.
technically speaking. And that's meanings you don't have a coaching staff, which is this never happens in the league. Jerry Jones did finally get back to the Bears, by the way, and say they couldn't interview Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
But and then, the 49ers, they fired their defensive coordinator. They gave their press conference yesterday. They're going to cut Hargrave. They're going to send him out. They want to bring Debo back next year.
Right.
And Kyle Shanahan basically admitted that he is going to do a full search for a defensive coordinator this year, and they're going to try to bring in somebody that can do something different. For a couple of years now, they promoted D'Amico Ryans and they said, run our defense. They gave the job to Steve Wilkes and they said, run our defense. They promoted
Right.
Nick Soros and they said, run our defense. And now it sounds like this year they're actually going to bring somebody in and say, improve our defense. So
Yeah.
that excites me at least. We got a really high pick this year. So yeah. Plus the
Sure.
rosters, the Cowboys and the 49ers rosters are hella talented.
Mhm.
So if they just come back healthy and everyone shows up for training camp, they should be in competition to win their divisions next year. So
Right. Obviously, like you already said, you're doing this off of what put part of it goes into next year's stuff too. I didn't take that much into account for next year. But just a little bit. At 22, I did have the Atlanta Falcons. 21, I had the Indianapolis Colts. 20, I had the Arizona Cardinals. 19, I had the Dallas Cowboys. And 18, I had the San Francisco 49ers. So those are my five. Um, I really like Michael Penix. I've always liked Michael Penix. I've always been the Michael Penix stan, I feel like. And the Colts have a really talented roster from front to back. They really do. The last piece is that quarterback. Not only can he stay healthy, does he want to play football? What does he want to play football? How often does he want to practice? Like all that stuff comes into account for Anthony Richardson. And just like you said, red flag a little bit. The Anthony Richardson situation. The entire year has been tumultuous. You had him sitting out and opting in for surgery his first year. Totally supported it. You're a young player, career ahead of you. Totally on board with you. You take care of your own personal self. And then in the second year, just ups and downs and getting benched and some of your oh, man, it's not been a good look for Anthony Richardson. So he has to have a bounce back year this next year. It's going to be trouble in Indy. At 20 Arizona Cardinals. I still think the roster's pretty talented. I think what you said, the first round picks, maybe not, you know, haven't splashed as much, but Marvin Harrison Jr. still had a good year. 850-ish yards is somewhere in the ballpark of where he was at. If you match him up with Marvin Harrison Sr., they had almost the exact identical seasons. I think they were spaced out like 10 yards difference, one reception different, and like one touchdown different. They're almost the exact same player. Um, so shout out to him having a pretty good season, but I still think the roster's super talented. James Conner, super talented. The running back behind him, pretty talented. Trey Benson. But then those teams in front of them, the Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers, again, a lot of that is based off of this year, not so much off of next year. If we're looking at what happens off next year, when we do power rankings right before the season starts, those two teams are definitely going to be pushed up pretty significantly, especially depending on what goes on in the offseason, who gets hired, who doesn't, and then what happens with those draft picks. It definitely depends on how much those teams get pushed up. And then you
did you
did say
mention the Dolphins yet?
this. You mentioned 17, right? Did you
Yeah,
have
I got to
17?
7.
So I'll do 17 as well. 17, I did have the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
Um, I think with how the season started, what happened in the big chunk in the middle of the season with Tua, the distraction of that, what happened with Tua is just awful. But then him coming back, being able to play, and then being able to at least compete is pretty significant in my eyes. I think that Miami is still a really good team. Tyreek did not have a good year. Um, Going back and looking at some of our preseason predictions and stuff about who was going to win some awards and whatnot, and you talking about Tyreek winning Offensive Player of the Year to start. Again, this is preseason predictions that we said. It was a lot of back and forth between you and I said I'm not so sure about his age and performance, and can he keep up another 1,700, almost 1,800 yard? I'm not so sure, and he didn't, unfortunately. But I think Jalen Waddle can take the team by the reins, and let's see where this team goes because I still think this is a pretty significantly good team at 17. Let's go ahead and spit off 16 to 11, and then we could do our 10 through 6 and then 5 through 1. Because spoiler alert, my top 10 didn't really change. So
16, I got the Seahawks.
so
I
did I.
guess the highest rated non-playoff team.
Mhm.
10-7 is an incredible year. It's a shitty year to miss the playoffs. Sucks for them. I would say most of the, I mean, maybe not. They're adding games, so 10-7 isn't what it used to be. But at 15, I got the Houston Texans. A lot of that just comes down to wide receiver
Did
injuries
you
this year.
real quick, I'm interrupting. Did you say the Bengals yet?
No.
Okay. Well, you said highest rated non-playoff team, so
Okay. I mean, all right. You're right. You're right. You're right.
sorry, I had
I
to
got
stop.
I got a little lost on the next year stuff also. Um, at 15, I have the Houston Texans. And I know that may seem crazy because the next team is the Bengals, but tons of injuries. They're going to be one and done in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
And I think I got them more sitting here just because of I think they came into the NFL this year like preseason rankings at like 3 or 4. Like people were super
I
high on this
Yep.
team. I know you were.
Mhm.
And I just didn't think that he could recreate what he did last year. So hard to do that as a sophomore quarterback.
Yeah.
And frankly, he had a shit ton of injuries. So it's really not his fault either. The wide receivers, every single one of his wide receivers got hurt this year. So
Yep.
freaking Tank Dell, man. That just um at 14, I do have the Cincinnati Bengals. They didn't make the playoffs. They got the worst defense in the history of the NFL. Joey Burrow is the third best quarterback in the history of the NFL. All the stuff we talk about, he should be in MVP talks. Can't be an MVP when your team doesn't make the playoffs, but
Yep.
it is what it is. After that, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay. Cool.
They are the team in the playoffs that I believe in the least amount because they have not looked great the past couple of weeks. People were talking about giving Russ Wilson the 3-year 100, the Baker Mayfield contract. I don't think he's getting anything. He has not looked great.
Yeah.
Number 13, I'm going with the Denver Broncos. The number 12, I kind of got lost.
They're good.
Denver Broncos, again, I think they're going to be, one and done in the playoffs this year, but it doesn't matter. Hell of a season for a young team. And then I want to shout out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I want to shout out Mike Evans for his incredible thing. And I also want to shout out the Saints because the Saints let him have it. And I think that's super, super class act. Baker Mayfield was freaking out a little bit when Bucky Irving ran in for the touchdown. And because that meant that they were going to lose it. And then obviously the Bucks came out. They didn't come out in the victory formation. They came out to get Mike Evans what he needed to get, and the Saints let him have it. And I know that there was a lot of criticism when I think it was Brett Favre fell down to give Michael Strahan the sack record at the time. I don't really care, man. Like it's a hell of an accomplishment for Mike Evans, and I'm glad he got it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're lockstep for the Seattle Seahawks at 16 for me. We have 14 and 15 flipped, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Houston Texans.
It's probably right.
It's just playoffs. You're flipped. You're not in the playoffs. I flipped those two. So yeah, Cincinnati at 15, Houston at 14. Now, if those two teams face each other today, I don't know actually who I would fully pick because I think that'd be a hell of a game. Pittsburgh is at 13. I think how they kind of pitter pattered out for the last couple of weeks has been pretty disappointing considering how good that defense is. Russell Wilson came in. He said, "Oh, I am the starter." Was the starter, looked like the starter, and then now you're sitting here right back with square one with Russell Wilson. And then 12 and 11, I have flipped as well. Tampa Bay is at 12, Denver is at 11. I think Bo Nix is playing just as well as Baker Mayfield this year, and the defense for the Broncos is better. So I think that Denver is the better team. Looking at those two teams back to back. I think when it comes to Denver just sneaking into the playoffs compared to Tampa Bay, you look at the divisions. You look at a division that you have three teams making the playoffs with Kansas City, LA, and Denver obviously making it in, and you have Tampa playing in a division where they barely squeaked it out to win their division, and you had fucking Atlanta, New Orleans, and Carolina. I think Denver is definitely the superior team right there.
I have a little bit more breaking news for the podcast.
Okay.
Carson Beck,
Oh
starting
yeah,
quarterback
I
for
saw that.
Georgia, just entered the transfer portal,
Yep, after
which
declaring for the
makes
draft.
it sound like he is not going to come out for the draft this year,
Yep.
which is interesting. They expect him to be the highest paid transfer portal player in NCAA history. So,
I mean, hey man, makes sense.
Sacramento State, go get him.
Yeah, I mean, shit, dude, he's gonna be 24 years old by the time the next draft rolls around. 24 and a half, damn near. So he's by the time he's midway through his rookie season, he's gonna be 25 years old.
Brandon Whedon, baby.
And I listen, I get it. I know Michael Penix is up there in age as well, but the problem is Michael Penix has all the talent in the world. And Carson Beck, well, we see where he's ranked on big boards. So big reason on why he's staying in the transfer portal. I think he's going to make more money in the transfer portal than he was in the draft this year, very easily.
That's the craziness of the NIL money, man. That
Mhm,
Sac State just got a former 5-star wide receiver recruit from Alabama. Now
mhm.
he's had some run-ins with the law, but do you know, not to hijack football podcast, but do you know the number one high school basketball recruit in the country? The number one recruit in the country. Do you know who he signed with this year?
No.
BYU.
Oh shit, did he?
That doesn't scream NCAA basketball powerhouse, but
Right.
BYU just got the number one. This money, the NIL money,
It
shit's
changes it.
crazy.
Absolutely.
So
We can
give
jump
me your 11 again. Not the
my
Bucks,
the Broncos.
Broncos. Okay, so
Yep.
we flipped. Okay,
Mhm. Yep. Um,
so 10. Are we still the same team at 10?
the Chargers.
The Chargers.
Mhm.
Okay, we're good there.
Yep.
Who do you got at 9?
The Rams.
I got the Rams at 9. Who do we got at 8?
The Commanders.
You're a bastard. You didn't change that. I got the Packers at 8. You have the Packers at 7.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, so you and me and flip. You guys are flip flopped. You didn't like that last minute scary Terry touchdown to win the game last week. Marcus Mariota. You didn't watch it, did you?
I don't give a fuck.
Who do we got at number 6?
The Baltimore Ravens.
Bro, this is the Minnesota Vikings. They just got their ass smashed. The
Don't
Baltimore
care.
Ravens are not worse than the Vikings.
I don't care.
If the Baltimore Ravens and the Vikings were playing this week, who would win?
I don't know.
Damn it. And I picked the Vikings to win last week and they got embarrassed. I'm a little scalded. Fuck the Vikings. I got the Vikings at 6.
Okay.
Sam Darnold is seeing ghosts.
Okay.
Who you got at 5?
Minnesota.
All right. Whatever. I don't. I got the Ravens at 5. So we're
Okay.
we're
flipped there.
good.
Okay, cool.
And this is going to be a flip too. Who you got it for?
Philly.
Yeah, okay. You're up. Yep. Who you got at 3?
Kansas City.
Isn't that crazy? 15-2. We are disrespecting the Chiefs out loud. For all the listeners, at the beginning of this season, when we did our preseason power rankings, and he didn't have the Buffalo Bills on it, I told him, I said, bro, if we were big, if we were syndicated, if we were on, the if we were on the Blue Wire network or if we were on the Locked On network or anything like that, I would not let you go on and embarrass us by not having the Bills on top 10. I wouldn't have let it happen. And I honestly, I think we're embarrassing ourselves by having the Chiefs at 3, but we'll see how it goes. So then number 2 is the Lions, number 1's the Bills.
Yep.
So the Lions' performance in Week 18 wasn't enough for you to put them ahead of the Bills.
No, because the Bills didn't. Here's the thing with the top 10. I said before we really started, my top 10 didn't really change. And that's just because most of the teams here didn't play meaningful games. Buffalo didn't play a meaningful game. So didn't really fucking matter. I'm not going to change them because they didn't play a meaningful game. Detroit did, but they stuck at the number 2 because they can't flop with the number 1 because they didn't play a meaningful game. Kansas City didn't play a meaningful game. Like these teams didn't play meaningful games. Starters didn't play. Philly didn't play. Meaningful game. So that's kind of where I have that stat. Is most of my top 10 did not change just because the week 18 didn't really matter that much. So that's how I went forward with that one. But yeah, all my changes came from 11 to 32 when we put the whole thing together. But that's our power rankings. The only really big power rankings that we've done for all 32 teams, we've really only done power rankings for top 10s up to this point.